With respect to Iran, I said if they need help with respect to the virus, we'd love to send. We have the greatest medical professionals in the world. We'd love to send.
What countries are you encouraging, perhaps, to lend their support? Because there are many countries that feel.
I'm not encouraging or discouraging. They've been a very hostile country. They made a deal that President Obama should have never made. It was a short-term deal, giving them $150 billion, giving them $1.8 billion in cash. Green, fill up this room 5 times.
Do you have a moral responsibility?
No, nobody's even asking that. I have a moral responsibility to help them if they ask. If they needed help, I would certainly consider different things.
The United Nations says they need help.
Well, that's up to the United Nations. I'm talking about us. And what happens is if they wanted help, because they have a very big case of virus, a very, very big case, one of the worst on earth. If you believe what you're reading, and I happen to believe what I see and what I know, and if they wanted help, we'd give them help. Yeah, you had one in the back, please?
Mr. President, and a question for Jared, too. You talk about a granular approach to receiving data from these different states and regions to try and figure out what they need. The President, you just enacted the VPA on ventilators and masks. Are there any signals from across the country that might indicate there are other things besides masks and ventilators that are slowly kind of rising in terms of need, like hand sanitizer, for instance?
Sure. So the first issue that we've been dealing with was really the ventilators. That was the number 1, number 2, and number 3 from all the states. What we've been finding is that people have a lot of these requests based on the models, and what we've been trying to do over at FEMA is say to the states, well, if you would like ventilators, we need to see first look in your states, right? So, for example, in northern Jersey, they're going down to southern Jersey and they're finding ventilators and trying to relocate them to where they have their hotspots. The second thing that we've done is we've asked them to survey for alternative ventilators. Dr. Berg spoke before about the anesthesia machines and the ability to convert them to be ventilators. So we're asking people to be resourceful inside their states before they come to the federal government. The third thing we've been asking states to do is to provide what their daily utilization rates are. So everyone's asking for everything. One congressman got a call from his local hospital saying, I need 250 ventilators. And he said, well, you don't have a COVID patient within 4 counties. Why do you want 250 ventilators? And he says, well, we just want to be safe. We're very nervous right now. So what you have all over the country is a lot of people are asking for things that they don't necessarily need at the moment. And the job of FEMA and Admiral Polovchak has been to try to make sure that we're getting the real data from the cities, from the states, that we can make real-time allocation decisions based on the data. And right now what's happening is a lot of the different cities and states are providing FEMA that information. We're talking to them daily. They're updating that information daily, and that's enabling the federal government to make much more informed decisions on where they position ventilators. You also have a situation where in some states, FEMA allocated ventilators to the states, and you have instances where in cities they're running out, but the state still has a stockpile. And the notion of the federal stockpile was it's supposed to be our stockpile. It's not supposed to be state stockpiles that they then use. So we're encouraging the states to make sure that they're assessing the needs, they're getting the data from their local situations, and then trying to fill it with the supplies that we've given them. The same thing with the mask. So the N95 mask is actually an item that wasn't used as frequently in the medical profession before this. It was used mostly for diseases. So speaking to a lot of the doctors and hospital administrators, they would say they used actually a very low percentage of the N95 masks. What the president and the vice president were able to do with Congress was to get the waiver so that you could expand the pool, because a lot of the masks were used for the construction industry. So now there's a much bigger pool of masks in the country. There was a stockpile. They distributed that based on where they anticipated a lot of the need would go, but a lot of that still is stuck with the states, and it hasn't trickled down to the right places within the state. So I would just encourage you, when you have governors saying that the federal government hasn't given them what they need, I would just urge you to ask them, well, have you looked within your state to make sure that you haven't been able to find the resources? Unlike other countries, a lot of the medical system in America is a private. It's not a public government controlled. So you have to get the data from what's in their state, look at it in that way, and then make sure that they're being resourceful in a way to do that. And also ask them what their utilization percentage is, because if one governor is asking for more ventilators, and if the federal government sends them more than they need, the goal here is not to have ventilators sitting in a warehouse where you have another state where you have people who need them. So what we're trying to do is make informed, data-driven decisions, both on ventilators, masks, any other supply we can get to make sure it's going to the people who need them.
Jared, what triggered?
I wonder if you could weigh in on the reports of which I'm sure you're aware, where unnamed White House officials have described your role as being something of running a shadow task force. How do you describe your role? How do you describe the qualifications you bring to your role?
Yeah, I would just say very simply, look, the president asked the vice president to run the task force. The vice president asked me to assist. I've been serving really at the direction of the vice president. He's asked me to get involved in different projects. The vice president and I speak probably sometimes 5-10 times a day, but everything that I'm doing is at the direction of the vice president. If some people are talking to you, that means they're probably not informed as to what's going on, but I can assure you that I'm speaking with Dr. Birx, Dr. Falchi, the Vice President, and the President multiple times a day to make sure that I'm accomplishing and focusing on the objectives that the Vice President deems a priority.
To follow up on the
Or they
ventilators
don't
and the
exist.
national
Or these
stockpile.
sources don't exist. They're fake sources. Okay. A lot of fake sources out there, they don't exist. I read about it for a long time. I've been reading. A lot of them are fake sources. They don't exist. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jared, what triggers sending a ventilator from the national stockpile to a state? In other words, how sick does somebody have to be to get one of these national ventilators?
Well, that's not the issue that's not the criteria. You have the states basically putting in their requests, and they're giving us their utilization percentages. So it's a very simple formula. The states should know how many ventilators they have in their states. And by the way, some governors you speak to are senators, and they don't know what's in their state. You know, some governors I'll speak to, and they'll know to the number how many ventilators they have in their state, because that's the first thing a good manager will do. What a lot of the voters are seeing now is that when you elect somebody to be a mayor or a governor or a president, you're trying to think about who will be a competent manager during the time of crisis. This is a time of crisis, and you're seeing certain people are better managers than others. So what I would say is that the way that the federal government's trying to allocate it is they're trying to make sure, A, you have your data, right? Don't ask us for things when you don't know what you have in your own state. Just because you're scared, you ask your medical professionals, and they don't know. You have to take inventory of what you have in your own state, and then you have to be able to show that there's a real need. And so we pre-positioned a lot of things because most governors off the bat didn't know what they needed. But FEMA has a joint command with Admiral Polovchek, Admiral Giroir, and Pete Gaynor, where every couple hours when their requests come in, they evaluate the request, they all vote on the request, and then if there's something that they want to elevate to the task force, they bring it to the vice president to make a recommendation.
Sure, if I may, you might ask Deborah that we're literally tracking hospitalization cases on a daily basis, interacting with governors and health systems, and that informs our supply chain decisions.
Yeah, I want to thank the health commissioners and all of them that have been sending hospital data in. I think it's really critical and important to all of us. New York City has been providing information, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and certainly Louisiana in these hotspots. And that allows us, we can see where they are with the rising number of cases, where they are in their curve, what can be predicted, and really ensuring that people get what they need as they need it. And so I think many of the governors now and the health commissioners have been, I had to use 20, I'm intubating 20 people a day now. I have enough for the next 3 days. If that doubles, we're seeing our hospitalization rates stabilizing, but we still think there will be this many more in the next days. That's the information that they then translate into providing the ventilators. So when you see the ventilator numbers going out, they're going out in 150s and 200s, because I think early on we sent a big bolus out, and then not all of them, even today, have been fully utilized. And so we want to make sure every state and every hotspot can be reassured that ventilators are there for them as they move through the curve. And I think to date, we've been able to do that. And I think that's what's important to me, is that people have what they need when they need it. And to date, people who have needed ventilators have been able to get on ventilators. And I think that's our goal with governors and with the mayors, to make sure that continues to happen. But that means all of us have to work together. And I think that's what's been really important over the last few weeks, is people are not making generic requests anymore. They're making data-driven requests because they know precisely what's happening in their hospitals.
Dr. Burks, when you were up here a little bit ago, you talked about the curve and what you're seeing and your concern that people are not abiding by the social distancing guidelines. And you seemed in your voice to be quite concerned about that. Has the curve changed?